something that is believed to come out at night and steal money from other people's homes. This legend is known as Babi Ngepet. Hello, this time with a slightly different style. IIBNU. Will bring a story that is quite famous in Indonesia. It might sound strange at first. It might even sound like a myth that should have been long gone, but to this day, this story is still talked about. In some places, when someone suddenly becomes rich without any clear explanation, people don't always attribute it to luck. This legend is known as Babi Ngepet. And to understand why this story is still alive today, we have to start from one simple thing: money. In many densely populated areas in Indonesia, especially in lower middle class areas, money is not just a means of exchange. Money is self-esteem. Money is proof that someone is successful. And when someone suddenly has more money than seems reasonable, questions start to arise. Not in front of her face, but behind her back. What is a Babi Ngepet? In folk belief, a pig ngepet is a person, usually a man, who performs a ritual to be able to turn into a pig at night. The goal is not to kill, it's not to cause physical harm, but stealing cash from other people's homes. It's said that after transforming, he would leave the house quietly. He would walk through narrow alleys he would enter, houses whose doors weren't locked properly, or through small gaps that are even difficult to explain logically. Only money was taken. No televisions, no large jewelry, no heavy items, only money. And according to the story, the money will grow after being brought home. How is the ritual done? According to various versions of folklore, the ritual has almost the same pattern. First, the perpetrator must fast for several days. This involves not only abstaining from hunger, but also refraining from social activities. Second, he had to lock himself in a dark room. In the room, there is only one source of light, namely a candle. This candle is very important. It's believed to be the link between the human and animal forms. As long as the candle burns, the creature can return. If the candle goes out before it completes its task, it will not be able to transform back into a human. Usually, there is one person who helps keep the candle burning: wife, sibling, trusted person. This means that in this story, evil is never truly committed alone. There's involvement, there's agreement, there's shared risk. What really happened? Now we get to the more interesting part. Do people really believe someone could turn into a pig for money? Some, yes. But what's more important is why they want to believe it. Imagine a small neighborhood. Suddenly, several homes lost money. Not much, but enough to make people nervous. At the same time, there was one person whose life seemed to improve. The house was repainted. The furnishings were new. The appearance had changed. And no one knows where it comes from. In such situations, humans tend to look for patterns. And when the pattern can't be explained rationally, legends step in to fill the gaps. Who benefits? In simple terms, if the ritual is correct, the performer is the one who benefits. He earned money without working extra. He was able to pay off debts. He was able to fix up his house. He was able to improve his social status. In a society that pays so much attention to social perception, that's a huge advantage. He was no longer seen as a failure. He no longer felt left behind. But there was a psychological cost. Because the more successful he appeared, the greater the suspicion. Who's harmed? First, of course, are the victims of theft. Usually not the rich. Instead, it's neighbors, people whose lives are not much different. Second, the social environment. Trust begins to crumble. Neighbors become suspicious of each other. People begin to distance themselves. And accusations can arise without proof. In several modern incidents, residents have actually captured a pig and paraded it around the village, believing it to be a human incarnate. After examination, it turned out to be just an ordinary pig. But what's interesting isn't the pig. What's interesting is how quickly people believed it. Why does this story endure? Because the piggy bank isn't just about magic. It's a symbol of economic inequality, a symbol of unacknowledged envy, a symbol of the social pressure to appear successful. In an economically competitive society, the success of others can feel like a threat. And stories like this provide a simple answer. It's not smarter. It's not harder working. It's just cheating. And if one day it falls, society feels like it's regaining balance. Psychological perspective. Now let's look at it from the perpetrator's perspective. Suppose someone truly considers this ritual. What drives them? Not extreme greed, but exhaustion, a sense of failure, pressure to meet family expectations. Under certain circumstances, people can convince themselves that wrongdoing is a temporary solution. And at that point, the true transformation isn't in the body, but in the moral realm. Is this real? Scientifically, there is no evidence that humans can transform into animals. There are no authentic records. There is no medical verification. However, as a social phenomenon, Babi Ngepet, a mythical creature, is very real. Because it influences the way people think, the way people suspect things, the way society explains things that are difficult to accept. A more specific example. There was an incident that was widely discussed a few years ago. A small neighborhood began to feel uneasy because money was frequently going missing. Not a large amount, but enough to make people suspicious. Several homes experienced the same thing. Money kept in closets, under mattresses, or in drawers was dwindling. There were no signs of a break-in, no broken windows, and as usual, attention began to focus on one person. Someone who had seemed more settled in recent months. His house had been renovated. He had bought a new car. His clothes looked neater. The problem was, no one knew for sure what he did for a living. Rumors began to spread, slowly at first, then they grew bolder. Finally, one night, several residents decided to stand guard. They didn't report it to the police. They wanted to prove something for themselves. In the middle of the night, a pig was seen running near a row of houses. It wasn't your ordinary pet pig. It appeared at an odd hour. And in such a crowded neighborhood, its appearance felt strange. Residents chased it. The pig was caught, beaten, tied up, surrounded by people who were already convinced. Screams were heard. Some said its screams sounded strange, too high-pitched, too unusual. The next morning, the suspect hadn't left the house. Rumors spread quickly. They said he was sick. They said his body was bruised. They said this was proof. But when the authorities finally arrived and conducted an investigation, the results were different. There was no ritual. There was no evidence of any involvement. The pig was just an ordinary animal that someone had deliberately let loose to create panic. And the accused, nothing was proven. But his reputation was already damaged. Neighbors no longer greeted him as they used to. His children began to be teased. His wife rarely left the house. Although there was no evidence that he had ever changed into anything, in the minds of many, he had already become a monster. How did it end? The case slowly faded from public view. There were no sweeping apologies, no restitution that truly matched the damage done. The neighborhood calmed down, but it was never truly the same. People still locked their doors tighter. They still watched each other. They still kept track of who bought what. Because the underlying issue was never truly resolved. The money may have stopped missing, but the suspicions remained. In the end, perhaps the piggy bank never really existed. No human turned into an animal. There was no magic candle. There was no physical transformation. But there was something far more real. Economic pressure, shame, social envy, and the need to find simple explanations for complex injustices. Legends like this don't persist because the magic is powerful. They persist because the emotions are powerful. Because under certain circumstances, it's easier to believe that someone is using dark powers, than to accept that life isn't always fair. And perhaps that's what's most disturbing. It's not the possibility that someone could turn into a pig. It's the possibility that we could turn into judges without ever really knowing the truth.